Education shapes our understanding of the world and enriches our journeys through life. But all too often there is a disconnect between the learning we have and the learning we need. Education needs to adapt to our lives and help us to become fulfilled individuals and engaged citizens. It needs to prepare us to meet the challenges of our time and build sustainable societies. Education needs to be accessible where it is not, available to all, at any stage of life. Whenever and wherever we may need it. Learning and teaching need to be engaging and stimulating. Learning needs to come alive. WISE 2013, Reinventing Education for Life.
Your Highness, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to this final session here at WISE, a chance for us all to reflect upon a very full few days and also to draw some conclusions about this year's learning and themes. This session is also going to bring a chance to hear more about the work that led to this year's WISE Prize, because in a moment I'll be inviting this year's laureate to address us and tell us more about her ideas and her thinking. And I'd like to invite you all to tweet about what you hear in that address, or indeed about anything that you hear in this closing session using the hashtag WISE13 and also WISE Prize. The 2013 laureate has spent her entire professional life on a mission to educate. In her native Colombia, she challenged the traditional model of learning with the teacher standing at the front of the class full of children, and she moved the focus directly onto the child. Her ideas then spread beyond Colombia, across Latin America, and indeed to countries as far afield as East Timor and Vietnam. To date, her work has reached over 5 million children. So please give a warm welcome to this year's WISE Prize laureate, Vicky Colbert.
Your Highness, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen of the global WISE community. As I stand in front of all of you today, I wish some very significant and dear people would be with me. My mother, Pauline, a forward-looking educator in Colombia. My godfather, in Latin America we have godfathers, who brought to Colombia the most progressive ideas in education. And Oscar, a dear colleague and the first rural teacher I met when I started my career. I owe to them, to a great extent, the inspiration and courage to engage in this lifelong journey and life project of more than 30 years, dedicated to create opportunities to give quality of education to all children. I owe to them a very, very wonderful feeling and emotions of thanking. Wherever they are in the universe, they're looking at me, and I thank them for their love, support, and especially the inspiration. I would like to tell you the story of two people. One of them is myself. I studied sociology in Colombia initially. As a sociologist, you always want to reduce inequalities and drive social change. I taught sociology of education in schools of education, that basic education was crucial. This was my conclusion, that without quality basic education, no social, economic, peace or development could ever be achieved. And you can only sustain the goals of the other sectors of health and nutrition unless you have quality basic education. I then started to work in distance education, trying to reach the most remote schools of Colombia. But I realized we were the ones that were distant from education. I realized that there was a huge gap between what teachers learned in the schools of education, at least in Colombia and some countries of Latin America, and the reality of the poorest, vulnerable, remote schools of the country. For example, teachers were receiving conferences on active participatory learning, and they were instructed that they use active methods themselves. How could they make the change if they had not practiced these methods while being trained as teachers? The challenge was finding simpler ways to express all these complex ideas that are in the academic level. It was a really desperate need to translate complexity into more simple things. And this is the only way to ignite social change. Everybody had the rhetoric, but not the concrete instruments or strategies to make it really happen. Then I had the luck and the opportunity to go to Stanford University, and I focused myself at the micro level. I wanted to see the interactions of what really happens in the classroom. And here I started to understand that the way students interact in the classroom and solve problems, their daily routines, could have a big impact on society, especially in nurturing citizenship, skills, attitudes, and peaceful behaviors. There is an intimate relationship between pedagogy and citizenship building. This is what John Dewey said 90 years ago. I realized that cultivating the soft skills of social capital is essential to produce engaged, responsible citizens. Returning from Stanford, I was committed to reduce inequality and work where there was the highest inequity in the educational system of Colombia. The poorest isolated rural schools. Most of them were multi-grade. That means where one or two teachers have to handle simultaneously several grades. But they were invisible to both educational planners, teachers' colleges, and funders. The word did not exist in the schools of education, despite that they were 60% of the rural schools in the country. At that time, Colombia, as other Latin American countries, did not offer complete primary education in rural areas, despite it was a constitutional mandate. So I decided to make these schools visible and their teachers visible and embark myself in that endeavor. That has been more than 30 years. Everything was challenging in the rural schools. High dropouts, repetition rates, no academic results, low self-esteem of children, low teacher morale, inefficient, theoretical, expensive teacher training that had no impact on renovating teaching practices, urban-biased curriculums, conventional rote memory, teacher-centered methods. And the teachers in the multi-grade schools never received support to really handle simultaneously several grades at the same time. It was like a failed business, like a failed company, no results. But it was very interesting because what we started seeing as a constraint became an opportunity. Starting from the margins, you have to handle so many problems, but this is wonderful for innovation. At this moment of the story is when I met Oscar, an outstanding, motivated, charismatic rural teacher from Norte de Santander, a region of Colombia. He was a teacher in a demonstration school supported by a UNESCO project that was applying the techniques to help teachers handle simultaneously several grades at the same time. This UNESCO project was all over the world. This was the starting point of this long journey, and we started thinking big, trying to impact the whole system. This transformative vision forced us to rethink and reinvent everything. The classroom and the curriculum intervention, the training of the teachers, the relationships with the parents and the communities and with the administrators. In other words, it forced us to think systemically from the beginning and beyond the classroom. This is the starting point of Escuela Nueva, which means new school. Later on, Oscar this wonderful teacher, charismatic teacher, Beryl Levenger, USAID education officer that helped us finance the pilot project, and myself co-authored the first Escuela Nueva training manual, where all the underpinnings of the model are decided. But now you may be wondering, what happened to the second person of the story? Well, here it goes. This is Diego. He's 12 years old. At his school in Quindío, a state of Colombia in the coffee region, children sit and work in small groups, grouped by grade level. It is a multi-grade classroom where all grades are taught in the same room with one teacher. This was our starting point. When you enter the school, you immediately see it's quite different from a conventional school, and you instantly shift your attention towards the children and what they're doing. Some are working on their assignments, others discussing in groups. You hear the buzz and hum of work getting done and learning taking place. Each one seems to know exactly what he and she are doing and is focused. If you ask them what they're doing, they explain very eloquently and confidently. And most important, they explain to you how they are learning. They know they're learning through observation, discovery, reflection, working individually, in pairs, in teams. They receive feedback from their teacher during the process, not at the end, share their work with others, advance in their learning, and at their own pace. They finish academic units at their own pace because we had to modularize everything, the delivery of the curriculum. In this school, the teacher is really doing the right role. She's a facilitator, a guide, instead of just a transmitter of instruction and facts. This is the real new role of the teacher, a teacher that has more time to give feedback during the process, to help slow learners, to motivate. It's a different role. It's a more important role full of empathy and leadership. This is an Escuela Nueva school, a type of school where students collaborate, participate, dialogue, interact, exchange. One that fosters self-paced learning, but at the same time, cooperative learning, where learners develop social and emotional skills, now called the 21st century skills, such as learning to learn, to lead processes, to take initiatives, to plan, but especially work in teams. This is very difficult, unless you learn it in school. Children are organized in student governments, nothing new, and have committees, but they really are learning to participate and have genuine responsibilities. The student government promotes the involvement and leadership of both girls and boys in equal footing. I once asked a boy what he thought about the fact that the president of the school government was a girl. By the way, everywhere I go, I see this. And he replied, "She's great, she's much more organized," and he continued working by himself with others with no problem. So this suggests that there's a cultural change. What is innovative about all this? Well, most of you that have learned that way, I myself was exposed to this quality learning, well, this is not really new. You're familiarized with it. But this is not the case of the low-income public schools. I should say in developing countries and even in developed countries. The ideas on which we built the model are not new. They're grounded on solid educational theory. What is new is that we made this possible for thousands of low-income schools in more than 16 countries, mainly through governments and international organizations, managing to transform complexity into simple, manageable action so that any teacher, without having a PhD or a master's, could transform their learning environment, improve the classroom climate, and have results, not only in academic learning achievement, but in peaceful democratic behavior. It is simple, replicable, scalable, and cost-effective. So let's talk a little bit more about Diego. And so what's so special about Diego? Well, apart from being a boy, like so many living in poverty and exclusion, Diego suffers from epilepsy, causing him difficulties in learning. He used to attend a conventional school near his home. However, he says, at that school he was ignored by the teacher and teased and bullied by his peers. He felt rejected and left behind. So at 10, he decided he wanted to quit and not go back to school. Thanks to his supporting parents, he changed school. He now attends the Escuela Nueva San Gabriel School. This school is 2 hours in each direction from his home, a trip he does twice a week by horseback, accompanied by his mother. No matter the long distances and many obstacles of the way, Diego and his parents will do anything. So he attends the school where he, as he says, he feels welcome, happy, motivated, loved, and he feels he's learning. In an Escuela Nueva school, the school adapts to the child and not the other way around. What do we see here? Flexibility, inclusion, empathy, adaptation. So at this point, the two stories meet. Let me link this with the summit, Reinventing Education for Life. The theme of this year's WISE Summit, Reinventing Education for Life, resonates well with what I and the people around me have been doing for many years. Bringing education to life means reaching the greatest number. It means making each learner a better person, having the academic and social skills to navigate through life, and bringing life into the school. Bringing education to life requires finding cost-effective ways to provide learning for all. It means learning to become independent, free-thinking citizens, lifelong learners capable of building secure and prosperous communities. And how was this possible? From the outset, the plan was to make this social innovation technically, politically, we have unions in Latin America that are very strong, politically and financially feasible so that we could impact the national policy and reach great numbers. We demonstrated that it worked and started its dissemination. One thing is to have an innovation, another thing is how to introduce it into the system. And we started bottom up in an organic manner, not by decree, from child to child, from teacher to teacher, from school to school, from community to community. The real actors of change were children, teachers, and communities themselves. If we started as a local innovation, gradually became a national policy. So the Escuela Nueva model and methodology and pedagogy today has reached more than 5 million children in more than 16 countries, mainly through governments and the support of international organizations. There have been many, and has sparked reforms as far as Vietnam and East Timor. However, leading change at large scale is not an easy task, as Julia was saying yesterday. And as Geoff Mulgan, the director of NESTA, National Academy of Scientific and Academic Achievement in the UK, writes in a recent document on social innovation, quoting Schopenhauer, "On any truth, first it's ridiculed, second it is violently opposed, and third, it is accepted as being self-evidence." Escuela Nueva passed through all these stages. So as I stand here today, I'm very proud to share with you that Escuela Nueva has been my professional life project, defending Escuelas Nuevas pedagogy, evidencing it works and has results, ensuring its quality and sustainability over time, innovating and adapting it to urban and displaced migrant children and populations caused by armed conflict in Colombia, ensuring it has impact on national policies and keeping it there, has been my life project for more than 30 years. I have worked to develop, expand, and sustain this innovation from different organizational spheres. As the first Escuela Nueva coordinator, then vice minister, where I gave it total support in the country, then as UNICEF's regional education advisor for the Latin American region, was a wonderful platform to expand in Latin America. But now, from Fundación Escuela Nueva, Colombian NGO, I set up in 1987 to ensure the quality and sustainability of the model and to continue innovating. We have adapted it to urban, to displaced. But we have learned over all these years, you need to work with governments to have big impact and coverage. But you need public-private partnerships and the role of civil society for quality and sustainability. This was a way to continue protecting and enhancing the innovation, aware that innovations fade within bureaucracies. and are very vulnerable to political and administrative changes. To finalize, I want to leave you with 5 key takeaways that derive from the experience of Escuela Nueva and their absolute relevance to this year's WISE Summit and for the future. Yes, it is possible to provide quality education for all, even in the poorest of the poorest schools. Yes, we can, and this was before Obama's campaign. More of the same is not enough. We need a shift of the learning paradigm, massively. Third, learning goes beyond just cognitive achievements. Learning involves developing and practicing civic and social, emotional skills. As you said today, learning to be, as UNESCO has been teaching us, learning to know, learning to do, and learning to live together. These are the basis for peace and democracy. Fourth, we need comprehensive and systemic thinking if we want to lead large-scale reform. Fifth, to reinvent education for life, you must prioritize pedagogical reforms, not just administrative changes. As I said yesterday, I may be the most visible of the hundreds of people who have been with me in this endeavor. But there are many others, teachers, children, parents, colleagues, and staff of national and international organizations who have joined me for over 30 years in this beautiful journey, a collective life project of all of us. Let me close by sharing with you the great emotion that having received the WISE Prize this year gives me a profound feeling of accomplishment. I want to thank you and your Highness and Excellencies and all you who have accompanied me in this wonderful summit. And I truly encourage you to find your Diego and make his education come to life, quoting Ashoka's motto, everybody can be a change maker. Thank you.
Now, I think if we didn't all understand already why you are this year's WISE Prize laureate, I think we get it now. Thank you so much. And we have a little bit of time for some questions. So please raise your hand if you have a question, and then we will put it right. Can we get a microphone to the gentleman there and on this side of the room as well? Thank you.
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead?
Good afternoon. My name is Birama Konare. I am a World Economic Forum Global Shaper from Mali. For the past couple of days, we've been talking about online education, classrooms without teachers, open sources. But I still believe that we need more teachers in classrooms because our children need to be guided, need to be inspired, and we need to create jobs in developing countries.
So nothing can substitute for the teachers in the classrooms. Thank you. Let me put that. Would you agree, Vicky Colbert, that more teachers are part of the answer, or does it depend on the quality of the teacher?
The most important thing is the quality of the teacher, but not that you need more and more teachers. In remote rural areas where you have low density population, you don't need 6 teachers for 20 children or for 30 children. But what you need is more support to the teachers to help them do their job correctly. We need to support them much more. Their planning, a teacher in a rural isolated school doesn't have time for planning every day for every child, not even in an elite school. So they need more support from us. I think the first thing is to develop in any design thinking of any project, the first thing is empathy with the persons you're going to be working with, understand. If I had not met Oscar and all the rural teachers, and if I had not gotten to their schools and looked at what they were doing, what was really happening inside, how could I plan a project without understanding their needs? So I think that's the first thing.
There was so much that was really thought-provoking in what you said. One of the things that struck me is you were talking about the relationship between teaching and citizenship. And in a country like yours, which has seen many years of conflict, that whole idea of citizenship was potentially a tricky area.
Yes, it was so amazing, especially when we adapted from our NGO. We started adapting the Escuela Nueva because of its flexibility and the results we already had in the rural areas, in the urban areas. We said, why don't we adapt it for internally displaced children that come from conflict areas with the scars of war. And we adapted the methodology, and we created these learning circles, Escuela Nueva circles, within the communities. And it was amazing to see that in less than 1 year, their self-esteem was boosted. That was wonderful. And they were beyond the national mean in language and math.
So that wasn't a school in a camp. When you say a learning circle, what do you mean?
Learning circles, when big schools register their children, there are always some left out. And usually these are the poorest of the poor, the street children, and the ones that have come from these remote areas and from conflict areas. What they need is more love, more protection, a protective learning environment. And just doing that, they didn't want to go to the big school. They wanted to remain in these community-based learning circles. It was like a preparation for them to go into the big school. Now, they were asking about online. I think technology sparks change. I think it's important. But we have to be very cautious. Just introducing computers in the classroom without changing your pedagogy what it can have is a higher cost with a traditional technique.
So even in this high-tech age, are you saying don't get seduced by the technology?
We have to do it in a very mindful way, because I think it does spark, but first of all, we need a new pedagogy. That Escuela Nueva is like a chassis for the new pedagogy. Self-paced learning and cooperative learning, that's perfect for the introduction of new technologies. But we want to keep our costs. We want to do it in a very rational way.
Okay. Let me see if we've got a couple more. I think we have a lady in the middle right here with a question, and a lady over there. Can we get a microphone to the lady over there as well? And sorry, I can see other people. And gentlemen just here. Let's just take some of your questions. If you want to go first.
My name is Mariam Al-Nasser. My first question to you, what do you, to have a qualified teacher, they should get training. What kind of training session should the qualified teacher have?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And can we just, do you want to put, let's get your question as well, and then yours, and then I'll get Vicky to answer them all. So one about teacher training. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Eduardo. I'm part of the WISE Learners of 2012, and I'm from Colombia. So I'm really proud to share the WISE Prize with Vicky here, because, you know, it's for me, it's like, you know, she represents our country, and this is a big opportunity to show to the world that we are doing really good things in Colombia. And now, like, one of the results of the WISE Learners program, we create a program in a project, an initiative to work to create a program in environmental education. So I want to ask you how you are taking this topic into the content of the Escuela Nueva program.
Environmental education. And the lady who has a question there. Yes.
Helene Terwijn from the Netherlands. Congratulations on your prize. In the introduction, it was told that you reach 5 million children. Could you tell us a little bit more on how you spread your work and what you did to maintain the quality of what you do? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I remember the 3 questions.
Yes, don't worry, I've got them. Why don't you start with that last one about the spread of your work around the world and how you ensure quality, which I think is an important point.
First of all, the way that we influence decision-making and that others come is we had to have empirical research findings behind. I think this is the first thing. If you see changes in schools, the first thing you do is, but are they learning? Is there evidence behind? So I think one of the most important things was to have evidence behind Escuela Nueva, done not only by national but by international organizations, as UNESCO, as the World Bank, as from academic levels as Stanford and University of London. So we needed to have empirical research. Once you have scientific evidence, then the news gets around. So many countries wanted to come to Colombia, supported by international organizations. There have been many important organizations like the World Bank, UNICEF, UNESCO, Plan International, Save the Children, to mention many others.
Do you worry about the quality being lost as the message
supported
spreads?
coming and see, we organize these study missions. And then we have an international strategy to get it started in each country. The thing is, if it's only through governments, we can't control what they're doing. But we know that in countries where the project was well organized, well defined, and had results, like Brazil. I started, by the way, sending Colombian teachers abroad. So the pilots, the project started in many other countries in Latin America. It became a national policy because there were results. Now, we don't control that. It was mainly through governments. Something that was missing in our strategy, international strategy, was making sure there were other actors from civil society and private sector.
Which makes a difference.
To ensure the quality. So we cannot control the quality they're having in many other countries. Now, for example, in the case of hopefully Zambia next year in January, I've been looking for the right partner on the ground in Africa, and we have now a partner, and hopefully we'll start doing something in January. Okay. But because I found the right partner on the ground. Otherwise, only governments, they can do a lot for important decision-making and impact and coverage. But then there's a turnover of people in governments like in everywhere.
I'm glad you found your partner. Otherwise, I was going to say there probably is someone here who would more than happily partner with you, and there probably are other people here who could carry on your work. Could I ask you, Vicky, briefly to answer the question about environmental education?
Yes,
is that part of the curriculum?
Oh, definitely. If you talk about life skills, how can you not introduce the basic behaviors in health? You know, being in UNICEF, the whole child survival issue, was embedded in Escuela Nueva. Now, in the case of environmental education, unless you have a participatory approach to learning, you will not change behaviors and skills in relation to environment education. So it's crucial. Yes, we're working very much in environmental education.
And qualified teacher training.
Qualified
briefly,
teacher
what does it
training.
look like to you?
Well, that's a big challenge in the region. For us, I mean, I have to be very sincere. We had to start working with the teachers that were there. The urgency was in making changes at the school. And precisely, I was a little bit tired of working at the higher level education, at least in Latin America, because we're very academic and too sophisticated, and the language we speak, the teachers do not understand. So we try to make things simpler. So what we did was sort of compensate for where the schools of education were not doing. First, that the teachers live the same methodology they will be using with their children. How can we give them conferences on participatory and active learning? We had to go beyond that contradiction. Second, there's so much vocabulary in education. There's so many variables. We needed to have innovations set in place, demonstration schools so that other teachers could have visual images. You only change attitudes if you have visual images. You change when you see things. So having innovations in place. So we started a demand-driven approach from teachers. We want it. This is going to help us. And the third thing is not leave the teacher alone. We created micro-centers, or what we call teachers' learning circles. This is the basis for now continuing education with them. So this is our next challenge.
Well, good luck with that challenge, and congratulations on everything that you've done so far, as well as the best of luck for the future. Vicky Colbert, the WISE Laureate 2013. Thank you, Vicky. So let's just reflect for a moment on some of the thoughts that we've heard over the last few days here at WISE. Just a few of them, actually, because there have been so many interesting things that are said. Here are a few that stood out for me. Education is as urgent as the life-saving things we do from the beginning of a child's life. Are we getting children ready for life or just for college? Education without purpose is like a frame without a painting. And of course, there'll be so many more of your thoughts. Let's get the thoughts now, though, of our panelists. I'd like to invite them to come on stage now. So, welcome to all three of you. I'm sure all of you recognize Angélique Kidjo. Many of us were there last night when Angélique performed so incredibly for us all. she's a singer, but also an activist, and she's been called one of the most powerful celebrities in Africa. I mean, it's a terrible term, really, celebrities, but I think, you are someone with a very powerful message. The inaugural 2011 WISE laureate, Sir Fazle Hassan Abid, is back with us, known for his work in Bangladesh, but again, his is a model that has spread, and I think that your organization is now one of the largest non-governmental educational providers in the world. So that is quite something. And also I'm delighted to welcome Fatima Akbar, who's one of the WISE learners. She's been a WISE learner over the course of the last year. Fatima's from Bahrain, but she recently graduated from university here in Qatar, and she has been working on a project that would bring skills and knowledge into refugee camps. So welcome to you all. We're at the point in the summit where everyone's getting ready to go home, and I wonder what, Fatima, you would like people to go home thinking about, based on what you've seen here at WISE. What's in the forefront of your mind as you travel home?
I was trying to summarize everything I got from WISE, all what we've heard from the speakers and the sessions. And as a recent student, I'm used to putting everything in mind maps and organizing information as such. So for me, the two key issues are children and even adults that are out of school, and those who are in school but not getting much out of it. So for the children, especially children who are out of school, they're always learning, whether they're in school or out of school. Children are always learning. They can either learn how to steal, hold a gun, beg, or they can learn in school in a proper educational environment. So that's why it's very important to have children in school. As for those who are in school but not getting much out of it, I think the reason is a lot of schools and universities focus on graduating students who are good at something, someone who's good at math or at programming, at a certain subject. We need to focus more on graduating students who are just good citizens, well-rounded human beings.
Well-skilled, or able to apply those skills to a whole range.
Having transferable skills that can apply in more than, in life in general. So that's what we mean when we say education for life. We're not preparing them for a certain profession or for a certain university, for a certain major. It's education for life.
Yeah, of course, that's much harder to measure, isn't it? Which is probably one of the reasons it doesn't happen as much as it should. Sir Fazle Hassan Abid, what stands out for you?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Her Highness Sheikha Moza bint Nasser for creating opportunities for 2 million children, additional children this year to go to school, out of 72 million who are out of school, and also for advocating, for her relentless advocacy for getting every child into school before the 2015. So this is something which is wonderful that is coming out of this nation. I would also like to thank Abdullah Al-Thani, the chairman of WISE, for this wonderful conference, Reinventing Education for Life. Now, for me, reinventing education for life means that it starts from zero to your death, so throughout life. But we haven't really talked about early childhood education. I think it is so important to switch on the various neurons in your brain as a child to stimulate a child to
From birth.
From birth. So from 0 to 3 years old is probably more important.
Which means educating in the family.
Educated in the family. So that means mother's training, caregiver's training, to be able to stimulate a child's motivation, stimulated his mind. This is very important. I didn't think that we talked about it very much this year.
And you'd like to see more emphasis on it.
I'd certainly like a little bit more of importance given to early childhood education. So when we talk about early childhood education, most people think it's preschool, in other words, kindergarten and class 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, so a reminder, it doesn't start in school, it starts from the
So this is
beginning.
one. area. The second area is that when we talk about education, we talk about between 6 and 22, up to university. And now we are now talking about lifelong education. So we need to now think in terms of developing ecology within our society in which people go on learning throughout life. That we have not really talked about. How do you go on learning throughout life, and what are the methodologies of that? I remember reading an article in 1982 in one of the journals that where do you get the best adult education in the world? And it was Sweden. Because if you're a 50-year-old and you studied philosophy in your early life, and you want to find out what's going on in philosophy, you could go on and take a course in the university, night courses, and get another degree in philosophy, or get a diploma course, the new philosophies of 21st century's first decade, and so on. So that was Sweden. And then when we also heard about who provides the best preschool education, it was Italy, because they were Montessori system.
Yeah.
I wonder if
that league table would still be the same today.
Yeah, it may not be. But what I'm saying is that we need to think in terms of how do you provide the kind of ecosystem of education where lifelong learning takes place.
Yes.
And from zero to death.
Angelique, you grew up in Benin and now you live in the West, so you've experienced more than one education system in your time.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I always start my journey with my mom and my dad. My dad was my champion. He passed away in 2008, and I still miss him till today. My mom was educated, my father was educated. In Africa, it makes a huge difference in the life of a child, especially a girl. Because when you are born girl in Africa, you don't have an identity. You are the daughter of your father that have every right to do whatever that he wants to with your life. And my father have made it clear to the country and to his family that his boys and girls have equal rights to education, that no tradition will come between the right to have education for his girl. No one, he will stand against any tradition that can harm his children to go to school. So that's where my passion for education come from, because I have two parents that have fought for 10 children with one salary, sending 10 children to school, tuition, books, uniform, and tutoring. If my parents were able to do that, every parent on this planet can do that. But when it comes to education, for me, we have to find what education work with what country. Every child don't learn the same way. A child from 0 to 3 needs good nutrient for the brain to develop, which means the mother have to be well fed. So we're talking about education. The content of education have to be relevant. It has to be taken into account the culture of the people, their reality, their tradition. Kids are fed in the brain, especially girls, because I'm much more interested in having future leaders of Africa being women. When you are dealing with secondary education, where I am, and you start talking to the girl, some of them will tell you, I want to stay in school, but the pressure is so high on me to get married soon, because since they are born, they have been told that their future is better when they are married than to have a dream and to achieve those dreams.
It's true in so many parts of the world, isn't it?
Education for life have to start in the people's reality, in their community. The teacher that educate those girls and those boys of tomorrow, they have to live the same reality. The school that we prepare today have to teach the kids to be proud of their own culture, to be able to learn other culture and take it from there.
Fatma, this goes back to what Her Highness was saying in the Educated Child session about the importance of cultural sensitivities, that we need to be more aware of that. Is that something you agree with?
I definitely agree that culture is an important part of every society, and whatever we introduce, any changes in education, any kind of development has to take into consideration the culture of that society in order to help people accept it and in order to make it successful and sustainable in that society.
And to enable it to have a bigger impact. Let's just get a few different thoughts from all of you that we can put to the panel. So again, please raise your hands if you have some questions, and we'll put them to the panel in the time that we have. Yes, can we come to so one here, and sorry, forgive me, the gentleman there. And the lady at the back, number 3. Why don't we start with let's go 3, and then 1, and then the gentleman over there.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Rhonda Zalesny Green, and I'm with the University of London as well as the GSMA. And I wanted to respond to the last comment about taking culture into consideration. I have a slight disagreement to a point, because what do you do when the culture doesn't believe that it's a right to educate a girl? How do you get around that kind of a cultural barrier to ensure that everyone who deserves an education, boy or girl, actually receives it?
Thank you. Excellent point. And let's come to this lady here. If you could just stand up while you make your point, that would be helpful. Yeah, lady here.
My name is Mrs. Buli Kambabari. I am Minister of National Education in Burkina Faso. And I would like to give my full support to what Mrs. Kidjo just said about introducing culture in the educational system. This is essential, and especially so in a continent such as Africa today. In most countries today, we're talking about the issue of quality education. But which countries in Africa today encourage the use of African languages? There are very few such countries, and children who don't understand French or English and enter a classroom and where only French or English is spoken, they have the cumulated difficulty of understanding the language plus the subject matter that is being taught in a language that neither his mother, father or community speaks. And this tends to increase the hurdles to education. And this is, I believe, an essential point. African languages must be promoted and used in the African educational system. And this is what we are implementing in Burkina Faso. We have a bilingual system and a multilingual system with Arabic, French, and also English used in the education system. But I really want to emphasize the capacity of education, the transformative power of education. Indeed, all cultures and all traditions, such as refusing that children receive education, through education in Burkina Faso, we have changed the status of women in our country. And we are only a few steps away from equity, and we believe that by 2015 there will be gender equality in our country. And we have little resources, but with those who have supported us, of which the Qatar Foundation, I'd like to thank Sheikha, we have managed to eradicate illiteracy in our country.
I'd like to get a couple more questions in. The gentleman here.
Hello, my name is Ehsan Jamil and I'm from Pakistan. I was very heartened to hear Mr. Abid's comment about 0 to 3 and education really starting from the cradle. I would like to ask him in particular, what is it that you're going to do, given that you have BRAC as the largest education institution and NGO in the world? How do you intend to take this insight, which I'm delighted to hear about, further in the way education needs to be transformed?
Okay, thank you. Perhaps we could actually start on that point about if you could talk a bit more about education from 0 to 3, because that middle-class children have an advantage there, don't they? The children who come from the kind of homes where parents will already be aware of the need to develop their children's minds at that stage.
Well, it is the 0 to 3 education is usually not given by either mother or the caretaker, not the teacher. So in the West, you find caregivers, trained caregivers are available when mothers are going to work and leaving them with trained caregivers. But what happens in the third world, in our countries, the mothers are not educated, they are not trained, and the caregivers don't exist, or mothers are the primary caregivers. So you really have to develop these skills in mothers, either through training or some kind of a
Is your organization
orientation.
doing that already?
So what we have in BRAC, in the university, we have an Institute of Educational Development where we have an MA degree, MSc in early childhood education. And that is for people who are going to train others. So in other words, we have a collaboration with Columbia University and BRAC. Together we give this course, and this is a very high quality course. And this is now being done in Bangladesh, but hopefully we'll have students coming from all over Africa and other countries that we would like to train them in our university in early childhood education. I would like to also comment on the other two.
Briefly.
Can I be very brief?
It has to be very brief.
I remember in 2010, I was interviewed in Hard Talk in BBC.
And you survived.
And I said that the purpose of development is to change culture. And I remember it was the Director General of UNESCO, she was having a meeting in China the other day, saying that culture key to development. So I was invited to that conference, and I was in the first session, and I said that, and I'd like to explain what I meant by that. What I meant is that in Afghanistan, girls' education is not part of the culture, or it's culturally not appropriate, or they don't wish to send their children to school. But what BRAC does, we have 7,000 schools in Afghanistan for girls. We have older women taking girls from their home, taking them to school, and bringing them back to their homes. So this is culturally appropriate way of teaching girls in Afghanistan, and hopefully
women from the same culture, which hopefully goes to address your point about what do you do when the culture is not accepting of girls going to school. Angelique?
Right. Well, I'm going to come and tackle on to 0 to 3. 0 to 3, we talk about it in developed countries where you have caregivers. In poor countries where there's no money really for people to eat, how can you develop a brain of a child if the mother is stunted, which is acute malnutrition of the mother and of the baby from 0 to 3? So it is true that from 0 to 3, that's when the brain is really fresh to learn. But how do we tackle that? Not only talking about education, but how do we get it from a really good way by giving good nutrition? Going back to culture, every single person is born in a culture where culture, it contains a lot of things. It's not only music and art, it's also the tradition that are in the country and how we break some traditions that are not good for people. I've been campaigning for this since I started working with UNICEF. Like, female genital mutilation is a problem. Early marriage is a problem, especially me that is in secondary education, and I see drop out because of those. So you go to the community and you talk to people. The parents want the best for the kids. They make decisions thinking that they are taking the best decision for the kids. When you reach out to them, when you don't treat them as accessory to your girl going to school, then you have result. We have to change the mindset of people. It's the longest and the hardest thing to change, but we have to bring them to be part of the change that we want to see. Yeah. We can't send a kid to school and saying, we don't care about the opinion of the father, we don't care about the opinion of the mother, we want the mother and the father to come. And we have to convince them. And one of the things that I realize in my schools is that most of the time parents are afraid of what education is given to their daughter. They will tell you, we don't want Western education only. We want something that is sustainable for the society in which the kids are living and for the future of tomorrow. Because when they graduate and they want to come back and work in Africa, what do? They're going to start talking to people like they're American or they're European? No. They have to be able to come back and work in the country with education that is relevant.
Okay. Fatima? So you have to harness people from within the culture to try and break down those barriers?
Yes, I'd like to comment also about the respecting the culture while introducing change. There is a difference between what the culture of the society is and what a wrong belief in that society is. Girls' education can be a wrong belief. If they believe that girls should not be going to school, that's a wrong belief. It's not, the culture is not what shapes the society. So that can be changed given the right reasons, the right way to deliver that message. But it's very, very important to keep it in mind while introducing any change. So yes, there are wrong beliefs in some societies. By introducing change properly, it will help it the change get accepted and be successful.
Okay.
I'd like to respond to the minister from Burkina Faso. She talked about language of teaching and learning, particularly in schools. What happens is the real problem is that if you don't teach them French or English, your citizens are going to be disconnected from the world. So teaching in local languages is fine, but what we do in Bangladesh is that we have tribal communities who speak another language, many tribes, many languages. So first 2 years, the teachers are from their community and they speak in their own tongue. And the third year, they start teaching Bangla and English, Bengali
Bangla and English together. So they're learning two foreign languages to them at the same time.
At the same time. But it's gradual process, so that they don't become disadvantaged. Because otherwise, why do you concentrate on African languages or a tribal language in Africa, which is spoken by a few 100,000 people?
Yeah. I don't think the emphasis was concentrating necessarily to the exclusion of others. I think it's the idea that the indigenous languages were being excluded in the process of...
No, also, the parents of that child in Burkina Faso, they haven't been to school. They don't speak French or English, so the child...
So they can't help their child and they can't
have the child
relate.
So therefore, when the child comes into the school, we have to bring him a little bit of an education within his language, first of all, for him to understand what a school means, what being in classroom means, and then you can step by step introduce French or English.
Well, as ever, I always wish we had more time. There's so many different ways this direction could move in. But I'd like to thank all three of my panelists, Fatima Akbar, Safazle Hassan Abid, Angelique Kidjo. Thank you. Thank you very much. There was something that Edgar Morin said on the very first day that really stuck in my mind, because we've been thinking about what education is for, about giving us the tools for life. And I wonder if you remember the same point. He said, to be alive is about confronting uncertainty and difficulty, and about facing complex issues of truth, illusion, and error. And of course, it's right that we start learning from day one, and hopefully we'll carry on learning and developing right till the very end of our lives. But sometimes we need to be reminded of the importance of that. So thank you very much to my panelists. It's been an intense few days here in Doha. And it's time now to get some final thoughts. And for that, I'd like to welcome the chairman of WISE, Dr. Abdullah bin Ali Al Thani.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Highness, Sheikh Hamouza bint Nasser, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. As we reach the conclusion of WISE 2013, I would like to thank all of you for your participation during the past 3 days. I also commend your commitment to building innovative partnerships to transform education. I hope your experience this week has been inspiring and productive. We are once again honored that Her Highness has chosen WISE as a platform for her global initiatives. Yesterday, we were pleased to learn of the impressive progress achieved by Educate a Child, and its international partners. This year, WISE has recognized another outstanding WISE Prize for Education laureate in Miss Vicky Colbert. I once again extend our warmest congratulations and welcome her to the ranks of those who stand as a lifelong role models for innovation and ambassadors for WISE. Interest in WISE Awards program continues to grow. As before, we rely on the WISE community to encourage applications from innovative projects that are effective and scalable. I would now like to tell you about the new initiatives that WISE will pursue in order to enhance its transformational activities. WISE will launch an innovation fund to foster education innovators and entrepreneurs. The fund will provide financial assistance as well as expertise and training to help them translate their ideas into action. It will initially be supported by Banco Santander, and I invite other organizations to join us. We will further develop our online portal to gather and disseminate relevant content and data. The portal will offer collaborative tools, allowing the WISE community to share ideas and build new partnerships. WISE will also facilitate access to knowledge and information through traditional media. The next WISE book will explore the link between technology and learning and will investigate how the connected society is transforming education. We look forward to its publication early next year. Along with our Learning World TV magazine program, we are introducing a WISE channel on YouTube to showcase selected projects and feature the best moments of the WISE summits. WISE will also continue to expand its advocacy and education programs. The WISE Learner's Voice program will be further enhanced through a year-long leadership development program. The learners will also continue to provide the voice of youth in a variety of international forums. And we will continue to reach out to segments of the WISE community through customized events tailored to their needs. In conclusion, I would like to thank all of our speakers and moderators, as well as the WISE Qatar Foundation team and our volunteers who have assisted in so many ways this week. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to announce that WISE 2014 will take place November 4th through 6th. I encourage you to remain connected with friends and colleagues you have met this week and to continue sharing experiences and exploring ideas for collaboration. Thank you for coming to WISE, and thank you for being part of this WISE community. I wish you a safe journey back home from your second home, Doha, وفي حفظ الله ورعايته.
Thank you, Dr. Abdullah, and thank you to all the WISE team for all the hard work in making the summit happen. Just to remind you of those dates for your diaries, the 4th to the 6th of November 2014. And applications for the WISE Awards are open from now until the middle of January. So do encourage projects that you know of to apply for the WISE Awards in 2014. If you missed any of the debates here at WISE, you'll be able to watch them on the WISE website, so do have a look at that. And you'll very soon, all of you, be receiving an online survey from the WISE team about your experience here. So please do take the time to complete it and to share your experience and give the feedback, because it's all important for future summits. I'd like to thank the premium sponsors, ExxonMobil, Qatar Petroleum, and of course Banco Santander, who have just decided to take part in that fund and make that possible. And also thank you to all the WISE media partners. And thank you, Your Highness, for being with us as we bring this year's WISE Summit to a close. Thank you all for being part of this conversation, and I wish you all the best of luck for the future in all your very valuable efforts for communities right around the world. So a safe journey home from me also. Thank you. Goodbye.